Imagine this. You're lying in a hospital bed. The beeping machines, the fluorescent lights, the clipboard-wielding doctors, all pointing to a single diagnosis: terminal illness. The prognosis is grim. 6 months, maybe less. But then, a new clinical trial offers a sliver of hope. You're administered a new drug, cutting-edge, experimental, promising. Within weeks, your condition improves dramatically. The doctors are stunned. The tumor shrinks. The pain fades. You start to walk again, live again. A few months later, the study concludes. You're called back in. The doctors, looking more curious and congratulatory, reveal something strange. You weren't given the real medication. You were in the control group. You received a sugar pill, and yet you began to heal. Now pause. Let that linger. What just happened to you? How can a fake treatment trigger real, measurable, life-altering effects in the body? How does belief, mere thought, restructure biology, reroute neurons, and rewrite pain? The placebo effect. We've heard the term so many times it's become background noise in scientific discourse. Something vaguely interesting, somewhat useful for testing new drugs, but never the main event. Yet this phenomenon quietly exposes something deeply unsettling, even revolutionary. It challenges the very foundation of what we believe about the mind, about illness, about healing, about reality. Think about it. If your belief in a drug that doesn't work causes your body to begin healing, what else are you unknowingly programming through your thoughts? What else have you believed into being? Your limits, your symptoms, your fate. And if you can heal through belief, could you also suffer through belief? We are taught to see the body and mind as separate domains, flesh and thought, neurons and ideas. Science claims objectivity, but somewhere deep in our cultural code, we're still children of Descartes, echoing his Cartesian divide. The body is real. The mind is slippery. Feelings are soft. Molecules are facts. But the placebo effect doesn't care about your philosophical assumptions. It slips past reason and penetrates the soft machinery of biology, revealing a secret code of existence. Perception alters physiology. Belief becomes biology. Imagination manifests inflammation or healing. A sugar pill can reduce swelling. A fake surgery can eliminate pain. A ritual, a symbol, a sentence uttered by someone in a white coat can trigger a cascade of chemical transformations in your blood. That's not magic. That's power. But it's power we've ignored. Why? Perhaps because it terrifies us. Because if it's true, then the implications are devastating. It means that many of our afflictions, emotional, physical, spiritual, may be rooted not in brute external realities, but in the beliefs we carry like invisible parasites. It means our thoughts, those fleeting things we dismiss as private or inconsequential, are quite literally sculpting our bodies and experiences in real time. It means that medicine, therapy, religion, advertising, even political ideology, they all function, in part, on this principle. Whatever can hijack belief can hijack your biology. So here's the great question that erupts from this silent revolution. What else have you mistaken for fate, when it was really a placebo in disguise? The job you believe you're unqualified for. The anxiety you think is just who you are. The chronic pain you resigned yourself to. The confidence you never thought you'd have. The love you believe you don't deserve. Are these realities? Or are they scripts written by belief, acted out so convincingly you forgot it was a performance? And if so, who's writing these scripts? You? Your culture? Your trauma? And more importantly, can you rewrite them? The placebo effect is not just a curious anomaly. It is a crack in the facade of empirical certainty. A portal into a forgotten truth, that consciousness may not be a passive witness to the world, but an active sculptor of it. That reality might be more malleable than we dare to admit. So the real question isn't whether placebos work. The real question is whether your entire reality might be one, a construct of conditioning, a structure of suggestion, a house of mirrors built from cultural myths, childhood beliefs, and unexamined fears. And if that's true, if your biology bends to your beliefs, then nothing is more important than examining those beliefs, dissecting them, challenging them, rewriting them. Because if your mind can trick your body into illness, then perhaps it can also lead you into wholeness. And that changes everything. You've been taught to believe that truth lies outside you, in tests and scans and data and diagnoses, that the only reality that matters is the one you can measure, flesh over feeling, results over intuition. But what if that very teaching, the one that tells you belief is weak and objectivity is strong, is itself the most dangerous placebo of all? The real trick of the placebo isn't in the sugar pill. It's in the story we're told about the pill, about healing, about what's possible. And this is where the hidden problem begins. We are creatures of suggestion. We absorb meaning through osmosis. From birth, the world begins to pour its story into us. Who we are, what hurts, what helps, what's real, what's nonsense. But what no one told you is that the subconscious doesn't filter truth from falsehood. It accepts whatever story is repeated with authority and emotion. That's where the architecture of your internal reality is built. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, the deep blueprint of inherited beliefs, symbols, and psychic templates passed down through generations. He warned that unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In this context, the placebo effect is not just a medical oddity. It's a glimpse into the machinery of that unconscious. Imagine the power of that idea. You could be living inside a mental simulation authored by belief systems you didn't choose. What if the ache in your chest isn't just stress, but the weight of your father's silence? What if your exhaustion isn't laziness, but a script inherited from a culture that equates rest with worthlessness? What if your chronic pain isn't just a physical defect, but the embodied memory of a trauma too old to remember? Now pair that with another voice, Friedrich Nietzsche, who declared that there are no facts, only interpretations. At first glance, this seems extreme, but dive deeper and it becomes clear. Meaning shapes experience. Interpretation gives form to pain, joy, despair, purpose. There is no pure sensation, only sensation as it is filtered through the lens of meaning. And what if the lens is distorted? We're not only fighting disease, we're fighting the meanings we've attached to disease, to pain, to success, to failure. This is the metaphysical battleground of the placebo effect. It does not work because the pill is powerful. It works because we believe the story that the pill represents. Arthur Schopenhauer went further still. He saw the world not as a rational machine, but as an embodiment of will, a blind, striving, irrational force that animates all life. This will operates beneath logic, beneath reason. It is raw desire, raw fear, raw belief. It is this will that gives the placebo its power. Not the intellect, not the conscious mind, but the primal, unseen currents of inner conviction. If you believe you are broken, the will bends reality to match. If you believe you are healing, the body attempts to obey. This is why Gabor Maté, working with addiction and trauma, insists that the body keeps score, not simply in scars and stress, but in how it listens to unspoken beliefs. He tells us that illness is often the language the body uses to express what the soul cannot. And sometimes the placebo becomes an interpreter, allowing the body to feel permission, finally, to stop screaming. But modern life works against this truth. We live in a society addicted to certainty, to external proof, to outsource authority. You defer to experts, to machines, to metrics. You take what you're told, not what you feel. You treat the mind as a passive observer, not an active participant. And worst of all, you treat belief as weak. This is a core philosophical illusion that fuels the placebo paradox. The belief that belief itself doesn't matter, that what you think or feel or intuit can't possibly override molecular facts. But what the placebo reveals, quietly, defiantly, is that belief is perhaps the only thing that ever mattered. The problem isn't that we don't believe in the power of the mind. It's that we've been conditioned not to. Think of a child raised in a home where illness is always expected, where stress is normalized, where emotions are suppressed, where achievement is survival. That child grows up with a nervous system tuned to hypervigilance, a body hardwired to embody tension. They don't just feel unwell, they become unwell. The story becomes flesh. And when they go to a doctor, they aren't just asking for medicine. They're asking for a new story, one they can believe in, one that tells their body, it's okay now, you're safe, you can let go. The placebo becomes a story they never received, the blessing they never heard, the internal permission slip to heal. So when you hear about placebo effect in medical journals dismissed as nonspecific responses or subjective artifacts, understand what's truly being said, that our entire model of medicine is built on ignoring the most powerful healing agent we have. And maybe that's not an accident, because if belief can heal, then belief can also liberate. And if you learn to harness that power yourself, without pills, without permission, then the entire architecture control of pharmaceutical dependence of medical authority begins to tremble. This is a philosophical revolution hidden inside the placebo effect, a silent rebellion against the externalization of power, a return to inner sovereignty. But it also demands a terrifying responsibility. If your mind is shaping your reality, then you are no longer innocent. You are not passive. You are a co-creator. And that changes everything. What happens when you don't know that you're under a spell? When the placebo is no longer a pill, but the world itself? Belief is a double-edged sword. It doesn't care whether it heals or harms. It only obeys a command. And for most people, that command is unconscious, shaped by culture, trauma, repetition, and subtle reinforcement. The placebo effect doesn't merely whisper promises of healing. It also screams silent curses when wielded carelessly. You've been absorbing beliefs your entire life like radiation, without warning, without filter. I'm not enough. This is just how life is. I'll always be anxious. Love always ends in pain. There's something wrong with me. Each of these is a nocebo, the dark twin of the placebo, less famous, but far more common. If the placebo heals through belief, the nocebo wounds through it. When a doctor says, "You'll never walk again," and you believe it, that belief locks into the nervous system like a curse. When society convinces you that beauty equals worth, and you don't measure up, the body hears shame as suffering. Your immune system listens. Your stress hormones surge. Your cells adapt to the narrative. This is not metaphor. This is measurable. Studies have shown that patients told a medication may have side effects are more likely to experience them, even if given a sugar pill. This isn't delusion. It's expectation triggering biology, words becoming wounds. And if a single phrase from a stranger in a lab coat can make you sick, what do you think your inner dialogue does over decades? This is the unseen consequence of not understanding the mind's power, of being told belief is irrelevant, of dismissing placebo as trickery rather than a mirror showing you just how suggestible, how programmable you really are. And you are. Cognitive neuroscience confirms this. Your brain isn't a camera. It doesn't record reality. It predicts it. It models, guesses, edits, based on past data, based on belief. Your eyes take in information, yes, but 90% of what you see is filled in by expectation. Your mind, in essence, is hallucinating meaning based on what it already thinks is true, which means, if you believe you're broken, your brain will show you evidence to prove it. If you believe people don't love you, you'll filter every gesture through that lens. If you expect failure, your attention will find it and ignore success. You don't experience life. You experience your beliefs about life. And so the placebo revolution is not just about medicine. It's about perception itself. It's about the reality-warping consequences of unconscious scripts running beneath your awareness. You're not living in the world. You're living in a version of the world shaped by inherited belief. And here's the kicker. That world becomes your body. The mind-body connection isn't a poetic idea. It's an anatomical truth. Every thought you have creates a cascade of neurotransmitters and hormones. Chronic anger? Your cortisol spikes. Repeated feelings of worthlessness? Your serotonin and dopamine levels suffer. Long-term isolation or shame. Your immune function tanks. What you believe isn't just in your head. It is your chemistry, your heartbeat, your posture, your breath. And so we see the terrifying consequence. A population hypnotized by fear, shame, and scarcity begins to embody illness, not because of germs or genes alone, but because their internal scripts are fundamentally hostile. We are being noceboed by our own civilization. Aldous Huxley warned us. He wrote of a society where people are not controlled by pain, but by pleasure, by comfort, distraction, sedation. But there's another layer he pointed to, more insidious, the hypnosis of meaninglessness, a world where belief itself is disarmed, where nothing matters deeply, where all is noise and numbing, where the soul atrophies not from suffering, but from nothingness. And in such a world, the placebo loses its magic, because people stop believing in anything. This is a spiritual nocebo of modernity, the sickness of nihilism disguised as sophistication. So we drift, disconnected from ritual, story, myth, disconnected from the sacred. We laugh at miracles. We scoff at suggestion. We mock the power of belief. And then we wonder why we're so sick, so anxious, so lost. But belief doesn't disappear just because you stop acknowledging it. It sinks deeper. It becomes unconscious programming. And when that programming is written by unexamined trauma, by profit-driven media, by stressed-out parents, by institutions that treat you like a number, the results are predictable. Mass psychogenic illness, chronic inflammation, addiction to certainty, depression as default, anxiety as atmosphere. These are not just medical issues. They are philosophical crises manifesting in flesh. And here's the most damning part. We then turn back to the same systems that program us for answers. We medicate symptoms instead of confronting beliefs. We patch the surface while the deeper narrative continues to poison the well. The placebo effect is like a glitch in the matrix, one that reveals how thin the veil really is. But instead of seeing the glitch and waking up, we double down on the illusion. This is not sustainable, because the unseen consequences aren't just individual, they are collective. A society that does not understand belief becomes vulnerable to mass manipulation. Political ideologies hijack fear. Advertising hijacks desire. Religion hijacks guilt. Everyone is selling you a placebo, or worse, a nocebo, and your biology obeys. So where's the line between healing and hypnosis? Between therapy and propaganda? Between empowerment and manipulation? The answer lies in awareness. In taking back the authorship of your inner narrative. In examining each belief with ruthless honesty and asking, who gave this to me? Does this serve me? What happens if I drop it? But we're not there yet. We're still in the thick of the fog, suffocating under a million micro-beliefs we didn't choose. And until we reclaim that power, the unseen consequences will keep echoing. In our minds, our bodies, our relationships, and our culture. But now the pressure builds. Because to live without examining your beliefs is to risk living someone else's sickness. And the moment you see this, you can't unsee it. So what happens when the spell begins to break? When the scaffolding of unconscious belief starts to crack, and you realize, I was never just reacting to life, I was enacting it. That moment, terrifying, liberating, is a beginning of rebellion, not rebellion in the usual sense, not rage or revolt or rejection, but a rebellion of perception, a total inversion of everything you were taught to trust. And it begins not with doing, but with seeing. Because the first act of freedom is to see the program. You must become the watcher of your thoughts, the observer of your inner rituals, the detective of your beliefs. This is an abstraction. It's survival. Because until you bring your inner conditioning into the light, you are just a puppet dancing to someone else's script. But once you see the strings, you can start to cut them. Carl Jung spoke of this as shadow work, the conscious integration of the disowned parts of the self. Not just your rage or your fear or your lust, but also your power, your voice, your intuition, all the things you buried to survive a culture that fears wholeness. To reclaim them is to begin reprogramming the unconscious. But this is not a mental trick. This is a rewiring of biology. Neuroscience confirms that focused attention rewires synaptic pathways. That belief, when paired with emotion and repetition, reconfigures your nervous system. That visualization activates the same neural regions as action, which means you can train your brain to embody new truths, not fake optimism, not blind faith, embodied belief. It starts like this. You feel unworthy, but instead of trying to feel better, you ask, where did I learn this? You hear your inner voice say, I always fail, and instead of obeying it, you challenge it. You visualize healing, not as fantasy, but as rehearsal for a different biological script. You speak new words, not because they're magic, but because repetition is. You sit with emotion, not to numb it, but to feel it through, knowing that what you feel fully, you no longer fear. And slowly, you begin to interrupt the nocebo. You begin to create space between stimulus and response. You begin to choose. You begin to reclaim. But here's the catch. The old story fights back. The ego, built over years of survival, will resist. It doesn't want healing. It wants familiarity. It wants proof before belief, results before faith. But healing often demands the opposite, belief that precedes evidence. This is why the placebo works. It bypasses the ego. It leverages trust, surrender, expectation. The white coat, the ritual, the pill, they all act as symbolic permission slips. So the rebellion is to create your own permission slips. This isn't woo. This is ritual psychology. Humans have always healed through symbols, stories, sacred acts. We are meaning-making creatures. The placebo is simply a clinical version of what shamans, monks, mystics, and poets have always known. The mind must be given something to believe in, something the body can metabolize as truth. So give it that. Invent your rituals. Speak your mantras. Write your counterspells. Burn the old belief in ceremony. Sit in silence and listen for the truth beneath the noise. This is not performance. This is how new neural grooves are carved. This is how biology bends the will. And no, this path is not instant. It is not easy. It requires vigilance, courage, a willingness to be shattered. But so does every revolution. Think of Viktor Frankl, enduring Auschwitz. His body caged, starved, tortured, but his mind remained free. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That's not metaphor. That's applied neurology. Frankl lived the rebellion. He proved that meaning, chosen even in hell, can keep the soul intact. And now you must choose, too. Because if your beliefs are shaping your biology, then the most radical act of self-liberation is not to find the right treatment, but to become the author of the internal script. This is where we leave the waiting room. This is where we stop outsourcing authority. This is where we challenge every diagnosis stamped into our identity. This is where we reclaim agency. But this isn't just about healing yourself. It's about becoming the antidote to a sick society. A culture addicted to despair needs living proof that belief can build new worlds. That meaning can be chosen, even when it's not handed to you. That wholeness is not a product, but a practice. You become that proof by living differently. Not louder, not preachier, just freer. You stop giving your power to systems that don't see your soul. You stop obeying voices that treat you like a statistic. You stop pretending that numbness is wisdom, and you start embodying the truth. Your attention is the architect of your reality, and this is where everything flips. Because once you've seen that, you can't go back. You can't unknow the power of belief. You can't pretend you're helpless. You can't keep living as though your mind is irrelevant. You've seen the crack in the matrix, and now it's your move. So take it. Write new words on the walls of your nervous system. Choose your own symbols. Bless your own rituals. Practice your own healing. Be your own placebo, not because you are pretending, but because you are remembering that you were never broken, only hypnotized, and the rebellion is waking up. There comes a moment in every profound transformation when the seeker stops asking for answers and starts listening for silence, because the deepest truths aren't shouted. They arrive like a breath, a stillness, a realization so vast it cannot be spoken, only felt. And this is where you now stand. You've seen the machinery of belief, the silent architecture that shaped your biology, your decisions, your pain. You expose the hypnosis of culture, the placebo of false stories, the nocebo of inherited suffering. You've glimpsed your power, touched the rebel within. But now the revolution must give way to revelation. And here it is. The body is not separate from the mind. The world is not separate from you. And healing is not something that happens to you. It is something you remember. Let that settle. You are not a machine with broken parts. You are a living system of meaning, intelligence, energy. Every cell in your body listens to your inner world. Every nerve responds not just to pain, but a perception of pain. Every hormone shift follows the drumbeat of your beliefs. You are not reacting to the world. You are in constant dialogue with it. And the language of that dialogue is meaning, not logic, not data, not cold facts, but lived, embodied meaning. This is the final secret the placebo reveals. Not that belief can change biology. That's already been proven. But that biology is belief. That matter itself is saturated with meaning. That there is no clean boundary between thought and thing. Quantum physicists tiptoed toward this when they discovered that the act of observation changes the outcome of an experiment. That particles behave differently when watched. That reality is not static. It responds. And what is the observer if not the ultimate placebo? You with your attention. You with your interpretation. You with your sacred ability to make sense of chaos. You are the medicine, not because you are magical, but because you are interconnected. This realization, when truly felt, doesn't just free you from illness. It frees you from separation, from the illusion that healing must come from outside, from the illusion that you are alone in a meaningless world. You're not. The placebo effect works not because of the trick, but because it honors the forgotten truth that you are more than your body, and your body is more than matter. You are a field of perception, a story unfolding, a soul in dialogue with form. And when you choose new meaning, when you shift from I am broken to I am becoming, your biology listens. Your world rearranges, not always instantly, not always visibly, but deeply, steadily, irrevocably. This is not New Age fantasy. This is ancient truth rediscovered in modern language. It's what shamans meant when they said illness begins in spirit. It's what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the becoming whole through conscious integration of all parts. It's what Huxley feared we'd lose in a world too obsessed with external stimulation to remember our inner authority. It's what Frankl lived we found freedom in a death camp by choosing meaning in the face of nihilism. And now it's your turn. To see your pain not as proof of failure, but as a messenger. To see your fear not as a prison, but as a doorway. To see your story not as something that happened to you, but something that wants to be rewritten by you. Because here is the ultimate paradox. Healing does not happen when you escape your suffering. Healing happens when you meet it, when you listen, when you believe in your own capacity to alchemize it. That's the revolution. That's the remembrance. And once you taste it, you begin to live differently. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for certainty. You stop begging for external proof that you are enough. You already are. The belief that you are not, that was the deepest nocebo of all. So now you choose. Not once, but again and again and again. Each morning you wake and decide, my story is not over. Each moment you feel doubt and whisper. Even this can be part of the healing. Each breath you take is a vote for presence, a vote for trust, a vote for the truth, which is this: the placebo was never fake. The illusion was that only the pill had power, but the power was always you. It was in your expectation, your surrender, your willingness to believe in something better before it arrived, your courage to move toward wholeness, even while still aching. And so we arrive not at an ending but return to the place you never truly left, the self beneath the programming, the consciousness beneath the story, the still point within the storm. And from this place, everything changes. You look at the pill and you smile, not because you think it's a cure, but because you no longer need it to be. You look at the diagnosis and you nod, not because it defines you, but because it helped awaken you. You look at the world and you see not randomness, not punishment, but a mirror. And most of all, you look inward and see home. This is the final truth. The placebo is not a trick of the mind. It is the mind's reminder that nothing is fixed. That belief is the first chemistry, that the body is listening, that healing is possible, that you are the one you've been waiting for. So return to your breath, to your story, to your truth, and begin again.